One of the most important things when it comes to agentic coding is learning how to learn faster using LLMs. And out of all the videos I've talked about with agentic coding on Claude Code and Cursor, and even my course, I think learning how to learn is the most important skill, and everything else should come after. So I want to walk you through my techniques that I like to do when trying to learn something new. And we're going to try a scenario which I've never done before. So we will see how it works, and you can kind of follow this if this helps your workflow. So I want to build a quick little CLI tool using Rust. I've never really used Rust before. I learned some of the keywords like cargo and stuff like that. But overall, I don't know how to write Rust code. And I think showing how to learn a brand new syntax with brand new libraries, a brand new package manager, and how I can do all that much faster using an LLM, I think could be a good video to kind of teach you guys. So let's start with making out a little plan of what we want to do. Okay, so we're going to just go ahead and make a quick little plan. And I want to make a CLI tool. The CLI tool should download a YouTube video. And then it should extract the audio. And then it should run the audio through Whisper 1 to get the transcripts. And then it should run the transcripts through, we'll do like OpenAI GPT-5 to get key segments that might be interesting for a YouTube short. And then we need to run those segments through FFmpeg to extract them and put them in a new directory. Okay, so I could probably take this whole thing and plop it into Claude Code and have it plan out and build out my entire application. Maybe it'll one-shot it, maybe it'll take a couple of follow-up prompts. But I want to actually learn Rust. I don't want to just let the LLM code for me. I want to try to figure this out myself. So I would recommend, I like using Composer 1 because it's very fast, but if you want accuracy, that's when you drop down to like Opus 4.5 or GPT 5.2 or Gemini 3 Pro, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, I've never used Rust before. I want to set up a simple Rust project. Can you walk me through how to get whatever Rust things I need on my computer installed? And then also walk me through creating my first simple Rust file that just reads in a simple number from the input line. I want to make a command line tool and then print out that number times 2. Okay, so I would recommend just whatever you can think up, be creative, something that could help you learn, and then prompt your way to get a really simple prototype working. Okay, so I'm going to kick this off and see what it tells me to do. I'm going to read through this output, right? Again, your idea is you need to learn, right? So read through the output, checking if Rust is installed. It ran which Rust C. It's like, oh, well, I don't know what which is. What does which do? Which runs the C if something exists on your path, right? Rust C is not found, so I don't have Rust installed. Let's also check cargo. Run that. That's also not installed. So I have never installed whatever necessary tools are needed to get going with Rust. Now it's going to say Rust is not installed. You can install it using the Rust Up official installer. Now, when it comes to running random curl commands that install stuff on my computer, I would double check this. I don't just let random things run on my computer. So let's go up to install Rust. There should be a Rust Up command. So let's double check. Does this thing seem like the valid thing? So TLS v1.2 SSF sh Rust Up rs. Okay. Yeah, this looks fine. So I'm going to go ahead and just run this one. And then that should install Rust on my computer. Looks like it's downloading Rust, it's downloading cargo, Clippy, whatever that is, Rust docs. Now, again, as the LLM is outputting, watch it because it's going to say things that you've never heard about. Like, what is Clippy? I have no idea. And then I could ask over here in another terminal, inside of Rust, what is Clippy? Clippy is Rust's official linter. It helps catch common mistakes, improve code quality, and follow Rust best practices. Okay, so boom, I just learned something that I never knew before about Rust. There's a linter called Clippy, and it installs it when you do this, okay? Now, you could also do that with other things as well. Like, what is cargo? I already know cargo is like the package manager, so I'm not going to ask about that. Rust FMT, that's probably a formatter. Okay, Rust is now installed. To get started, you can restart your shell, blah, blah, blah. Let's source the cargo env and then make sure this thing runs. Okay, so it's just checking to make sure everything is set up correctly. We've got version numbers printing out. Create a simple Rust CLI project, setting up the project structure. So this is going to do a cargo init with double number. Let's just go ahead and run this and see what happens. It's going to probably create some files over here. Okay, and then it created a main.rs. And what we could do now is we can start asking questions over. Okay, I guess we could build it too. Let's just build it. Okay, it's going to echo 5 to my cargo run, and we should get back 10. Okay, we got back 10. Let's try it again. We should get 7. There it is. Okay, so our script works. All right, now at this point, I would recommend stopping and kind of going through the code, we might even make a new tab, a new terminal over here, because we have a cargo.toml file. So I'm going to first say, like, what is this? What's the point of this toml file? Okay, and I'm guessing this is like a package JSON. It's the manifest for Rust projects managed by Cargo. It defines a package metadata, dependencies, build configuration, package structure. In your file, package is the version name. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and say, like, oh, it's similar to package.json in Node. Okay, boom. So I just learned what Cargo is. I don't really need to dive deeper into Cargo because I know what npm package.json is. If you use Python, you might know what pip is. It's all kind of the same thing with like a requirements file. It looks like they have a lock file. So this is all very similar, and like I don't have to spend much time like really diving into it. So now we have a source file and a target file. What is target? Let's ask this. What is this target directory? The target directory is Cargo's build output folder. It contains compiled binaries, your executable, double number, and target debug. Okay, so I guess here, this is our actual executable. And if I wanted to run that, I think I could just say /target debug double number. I'll say 2. Oh, I forgot to put a slash there. Let's go back over here. Let's do a slash. And we'll say 4. And we get back 8. Okay, so now I know what the target directory is. I know there's an executable that gets built when I run cargo build. It looks like there's also a cargo clean, which will just remove that whole thing. I can't run cargo. Okay, so I might be like, okay, well, I don't know how do I get this working in my terminal? And now, since I ran through and read the output, it basically said just make a new bash session, right? So I can say cargo clean. There, now it's working. This is why you should read the outputs of the LLM, because it's going to teach you exactly what you need to know. You just need to read it. Okay, and now I can do a cargo build. And so now I'm like learning Rust. I've never really used Rust. I learned how to build. I learned how to clean. I know what the target directory is. And let's actually learn the syntax a little bit. So let's load up the rust.rs file, and let's see if we can actually understand what's going on here. So I'm going to make a new terminal session. I'm going to close the other chats. So like, we're going to start fresh. It's fine. All right, so now we have some Rust code. Maybe you don't know how this kind of works, right? So use standard IO. This is probably just importing a package, kind of like an import in Node.js or a import in Python. You're just bringing in some type of module. Looks like there's namespacing. But again, the idea is like, if you don't understand what this is, go over and ask it over here. Ask it every step along the way. All right, we have a main function. I'm assuming when you run your executable, it by default finds your main function and just runs it, okay? We also have a print line exclamation mark. What is this? What is the exclamation mark? So I'm gonna go ahead and just copy this. What does the exclamation mark mean in this function call? That's something new. I don't know what that is. So let's ask, and it's gonna say the exclamation mark indicates it's a macro, not a regular function. In Rust, macros use an exclamation mark. Why println is a macro? Println is a macro because it performs compile-type code generation, expands into code that handles formatting, type checking, and error handling. Supports Variadic arguments. I have no idea what that is. I'm going to go ahead and just do a follow-up, like what is Variadic arguments, and I'm going to go back and keep reading a little bit. It expands into code that handles, you can pass different numbers and types of arguments. Println. Okay, so I guess it just means like arguments that could be variable. And then 3, it provides compile time format string checking. The compiler verifies. Okay, so you'll see this. Interesting. A Variadic argument are functions that accept a variable number of arguments. So a Variadic function takes 0, 1, 2. So it's kind of similar to like the ... arguments in JavaScript, I think. So you can kind of just put in whatever you want, and it automatically, at least for the println function, it'll take the next arguments and kind of slot them in to where you're putting these curly braces. Okay, so anyway, we're slowly trying to learn Rust, right? So let's look at this as how you can basically make a variable maybe. So let a mutatable input variable, it's a string type. We make a new one, and then using the IO library, we are going to read in a line from the user, and we put that inside of input. What's this ampersand mean? Is this like a pointer maybe? Back in college, we learned about pointers. I think that might be a pointer. What does the ampersand mean here? And I'll paste in. Let me actually paste in this whole line here. The @mute creates a mutable reference, borrow to input. @ equals a reference, borrow, @mute, mutatable reference, mutatable borrow. Why @mute here? Read line needs to modify input to store the line. Passing @mute input lets it mutate input without taking ownership. After the call, input remains owned by main and can still be used. If you passed input directly without the at mute, Rust would have ownership into readline, and you could not use input afterwards. Using at mute lets readline modify it while it keeps ownership. Okay, so there's something called like a borrow checker in Rust, and the only reason I know these keywords is I watched a couple of Primogen videos, right? Now, I don't really understand how it kind of works. I'm guessing that you make a variable, and when you pass it into this readline function can potentially like grab that variable and like take ownership of it, which means that if I tried to use it down here, it'd just crash. Now I'm noticing I don't have any like IntelliSense, so I might actually go and find like, is there a Rust plugin over here? Let's go to extensions. Let's find if there's a Rust one. Now I don't know which one I should actually install, so I'm actually going to ask. I'm going to ask an LLM. Take a screenshot. Which extension should I install in Cursor for doing Rust code? Now, I will say, when you're trying to learn something new, you're going to move slow. You're trying to intentionally ask more questions than, like, writing code is not the priority. It's figuring out how the code kind of works. So install the Rust analyzer. Okay, this one failed. Maybe it might be a Cursor compatibility issue. I don't really know. But I guess, you know, the point is that you can use the LLMs to try to ask questions and get a little better understanding of the language and the extensions around it. But we're going to keep moving forward. I'm going to make a new chat panel. I'm going to close the other ones. So how does this work? Trim the white space and parse the numbers. So we were making a float 64. We are taking the input, which is a string. We trim it. We parse it, which I guess automatically will take the string and move it to whatever the type is for this. We times it by 2. And then we print it out. Okay. So that's interesting. So at this point, I would not move forward if there's anything in this code example you don't understand. Right? For me, I'm reading through this. This all kind of makes sense. There's nothing that I'm too like confused about. Maybe the borrow checker thing will bite us in the butt later because I don't fully understand it, but I think I get the gist. And now we can move on to going back to our plan, and we do have a CLI tool, so we can actually like build it and run it. But I am curious, is there a faster way to run my executable or test without having to do a cargo build every single time? I want a faster feedback loop. I have no idea how to do that in Rust, so we're going to go ahead and ask it. Cargo run instead of cargo build. So if I say cargo run, and I'll say 4, does this actually work? Great. Okay, so now we just learned a better way to basically iterate faster using cargo and Rust. Okay, so we have a CLI tool. We know it works. I'm going to cross this off. Okay, next step is I want to download a YouTube video. So we're going to go over back to Composer 1. Some of these things I'd probably pick a more powerful model because I don't want the accuracy to be wrong. Composer 1 is great for fast things, and I do like using it for learning because it's so fast. You have a question, it answers within like 1 second. But for a question like this, download a YouTube video. It might get it wrong. It might take a couple of reprompts. So just keep that in mind. Based on your model, don't trust the outputs. Always be very cautious about what it's outputting. Treat everything it says as wrong and question its output every single time. Could you update my main script to actually download a YouTube video from YouTube given a YouTube ID? See if there's an existing package for Rust I can use to just do this for me. I want to put the video in a directory called downloads. Okay. Let's just go ahead and run this off and let's see if it can figure this out for us. Okay, so it looks like it found something called a Rust tube for YouTube downloads. Update the code to download the YouTube ID by downloading the directory. All right, so now it's making a lot more changes. And so if you're not really familiar with Rust, this could start getting overwhelming. The first thing I'd start with is what did it change over here? It added a dependency to download Rust tube. Now, before I actually run this code, I do want to just double check. If I go to the crates.io and go to Rust tube, I want to make sure this is like a legit thing and it doesn't have any like outstanding issues. The last time this was updated was 3 years ago. So hopefully this is good. I don't know if this is the best approach to do it. And then also in terms of Rust security, do I just randomly, blindly trust this package? I don't know. You could probably clone this and ask Composer like, hey, check it for malicious code, but it seems like it's pretty popular. So I'm guessing people would have found any issues. Anyway, let's just move forward with this. So I'm gonna go back to the Rust code and I'm gonna just go ahead and keep everything so that like we get this green stuff out of the way. And let's read through the file changes. So again, the things that changed here is we have a YouTube video, which gets passed into input instead of that number. So it did change a little bit. We get the video ID. We check to make sure it's defined. Otherwise, this is how you print errors. Print line. Okay. And then you return OK, so the main function can end. I don't know what this stuff is. Tokyo main. So that's something I probably will queue up to ask a question about. Downloads dir, so we're making a new path to a downloads directory. I'm guessing this is just whatever the current working directory is aware of running cargo. And if it doesn't exist, we create it. So it looks like you just say standard fs create directory all. This will probably just recursively go down and create if I had like nested paths here. Parse the video ID and fetch the video information. Okay, so parse it, descrambler video fetcher from ID into owned. Okay, so there's a couple things I don't really know. So explain the following. Let's do this. We're going to say into owned. Like, what is this? Fetch, await. I mean, this just looks like it's doing a fetch request and then it's awaiting. This is probably part of the third-party library. So like, I'm guessing it's just doing like some type of asynchronous call and we're waiting on it. Since I come from Node, it's like kind of, this looks kind of familiar. It's just a different way to write it. Move the video to the downloads directory. So video path, file name. Download the video. It will be saved to the current directory by default. So I guess we don't have any type of way to specify to this thing where it should download the file. Maybe it does. I don't know. But I guess we move it here. So we rename the file from one path to the other. So what we just learned from this session is we learned how to rename files using the fs module. We learned how to create directories. I'm pretty sure this is like a recursive create. We learned about a path thing, which maybe we can go and ask questions about. Video ID is empty. I'm not really sure what video ID is. I don't have like Rust integrations in my IDE right now. So like I'm kind of flying blind, but we could also ask the question about that as well. Let's ask that. Say, what is this data type? I mean, we know that it's a string, don't we? So this is a procedural macro that sets up the Tokyo async runtime for your main function. It transforms this code into something like this. Your async code. So I guess because we're doing these async things in here, if we didn't have this Tokyo macro, we would have to then like manually have to run these asynchronous things with Tokyo runtime. So I guess it just takes all this code and wraps it and then allows us to do this async await type of thing. Into owned converts a borrowed value into an owned value in your code. So I'm not sure if I truly understand that. What's ID? ID is coming from RustTube. And it looks like it's a namespace that has a function on it from string. You pass it a string and we get back this ID. I'm guessing this thing gets created inside of the function, which means that we have to like force it to be owned by this function to be able to access it. Okay. Now that's just an assumption. I don't really know. It says right here, ID likely wraps a string slice into owned, converts it into its own string so that the value can outlive the original string. This is needed because video fetcher ID. So outlive the original string. I am curious about that. I'm going to ask a question about that. And then also video.isEmpty. It just checks to see if it has a length of 0. Okay, that makes sense. Can you explain what you mean by outlive the original string? If the from string method creates a new string inside of its function call, when would that potentially get unclaimed or something, or not live anymore? Explaining outlive and why into owned is needed. The key insight from string likely returns ID string, a borrowed reference, not ID string, an owned value. Here's what's happening. The video ID is a string borrows from input. The ID string stores a reference. Okay, so I'm not sure if I understand that honestly. Stores a reference to what? Why outlive matters. Even though input lives for the entirety of main function in your code, video fetcher likely requires an owned ID string because the video fetcher may need to store the ID internally and use it later during async operations. With async code, the ID might need to be moved across await points, which requires ownership. A concrete example, here's an example of the borrower borrowing when at work. So we make an input from a string, we trim it, we unwrap it. Okay, so at this point, I don't really know what's going on. I've reached the point where it's like, there's too much terminology with Rust and the syntax, which I'm lost. And that's fine. So what you can do is say, I'm a complete beginner to Rust. Can you re-explain this in simpler terms? Because like you're overwhelming me with all these unwrapped in etc. Like just give me a 1-paragraph concise description like I'm a beginner so I understand what the heck this is talking about. And then we'll kick this one off again. Again, you can use the LLM to break complex language into simpler language for you. And then you can expand upon that later. So ID from string creates an ID that borrows the string like a library book. Video fetcher from ID needs an ID you own, like your own copy. Into own makes that an own copy. You need ownership because video fetcher stores the ID and uses it later during async work, which requires owning the data, not just borrowing it. Okay. So you're saying when I do id.into_owned, we are creating an owned variable and giving it to the video fetcher? Who actually owns it? Yes, here's who owns what. id.into_owned creates a new owned ID string, a copy of your own. So this basically copies this, I guess. That owned value is passed into video fetcher. Okay, I'm still not 100% sure I understand what's going on here, but I'm guessing when you say into owned, it changes this so that something else can own it. And then we pass it in the video fetcher, and I guess that stores it. It's saying it stores it in its own struct, so that later on when we say like descramble or download, it can still use that variable or that reference, right? But I'm guessing we can no longer use ID anymore. So let me just ask real quick. So you're saying if I were to try to print out the ID on line 41, like it would just crash because video fetcher now owns it? It won't crash. Rust will give a compiler error. After line 36, ID has been moved, consumed into owned, so it's no longer usable. If you try to print ID on line 40 or 41, the compiler will say something like borrow of moved value ID. Okay, what I'm confused about is it said a copy of your own. But above you said a copy of your own, so technically it's not a copy, it's just like a completely different type of variable using the same variable. Into own doesn't create a copy you keep alongside the original. It consumes the original ID and returns a new owned value. ID, the original, is moved or consumed, gone. So okay, when you call this thing is literally no longer usable, okay? But it looks like you can do id.clone. If you do want to still like maybe print it out later, you can clone it so you still have access to it. Or you could clone it here and then use the clone and change it to into owned. Let me just ask that as well. Could another approach be I clone the ID and then I change the clone into an into owned and pass it into video fetcher? Yeah, okay, so now I think I understand this, okay? So my point is when you're trying to learn something new, asking as many questions as you want to challenge your assumptions. Like look at the code, make an assumption of how it kind of works, and then challenge yourself by asking an LLM to reiterate on your assumptions and make sure that you really know what's going on. Because right now I think I do know what's going on. It took me a little bit of time, but now I'm good. Let's go down, download the video. It'll be saved into the current directory by default. And then we are going to basically just move it. Okay, so I think we could try running this. I need to get a YouTube video ID. Okay, let's do cargo run, and then it should ask me for an ID. It looks like it's not actually running though. So let's read through this. Failed to select the version of the requirements. RustTube 07 candidate versions did not match 6, 5, or 4. All right, when I try to run this, it fails. I think maybe the version of RustTube is not right. Like it's 0.7, not a right version. Now, what I would do is go to here. Yeah, RustTube 6 is like the highest version. So again, like what I'm saying is like this stuff doesn't always work. It does sometimes like, let me rerun this. I should download the correct version. And I don't know what it's doing now, compiling a bunch of code. Kind of crazy that we need all this stuff just to run a simple download YouTube thing. All right, method not found in video descrambler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all this. And again, this is the issue with using Composer. It's fast, but it's not very accurate. Sometimes it's going to mess up and give you like old deprecated code. I'm going to paste in that error, and then I'm also going to go and grab here. I'm going to say, please look up how you properly do this in the RustTube docs, because the code you generated was wrong. And also, is there like a docs file? Is there a docs anywhere? Okay, here's a docs. Let's click on this, and we'll also grab this whole thing and paste it in. All right, let's clear this and do cargo check. And that should hopefully just verify that the code actually runs properly. Okay, it seems good. So there are some changes here in terms of like, instead of doing a .download function, that thing didn't exist. But I guess what we do now is we say video descramble, video.best quality, get the best quality stream and download it. Download to directory. And yeah, so this is a little bit different implementation. So again, always question the output of the LLM because it does hallucinate depending on the model. But I'm curious, is descramble like a legit thing that's built into the video fetcher, or is that like an actual like Rust thing? Is descramble a Rust library thing or a video fetcher struct custom method? I don't know what the terminology is used for this, but let's see. Descramble is a custom method on the video descrambler struct from the RustTube create, not a standard library method. Okay, I just want to make sure because like every time you see something, like sometimes you have like random stuff like attached to strings. But I think we're good. Let's just say cargo run. Let's go back and get a YouTube video ID. Okay, let's enter in the YouTube ID, and then it should fetch it. Unexpected results. Could not acquire a player response from the watch HTML. It looks like YouTube changes API again. If this is not reported, okay. So I do think that in the issues, it's always good to go and check the real GitHub issues. They have a changed API. This thing is kind of broken, right? So I don't know if this is actually going to work. All right, so it looks like this is not going to work. This library is just not going to work. So I'm going to check to see if maybe there is another. So there's a yt-dlp Rust package registry, a Rust library with auto dependency installing for YouTube downloader. Okay. This one looks a little bit more popular. Let's go to the Git repo and check out the stars. Okay, it's 101. Last updated last month or so. Yeah, so it looks like they basically they made a cargo that wraps a Python project, yt-dlp, which is one I've used in the past, the yt-dlp. So I think we should probably refactor to use this. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this over here. I'm going to paste this in. It looks like the current Rust tube just doesn't work anymore. Like the YouTube API changed and broke. I want you to refactor all my code to use a different cargo package. I'll paste in the link to the cargo package here. And then I'm also going to add in the docs. Where are the docs? Oh, here they are. Let's just grab these docs and I'll paste this in. And that should hopefully download the new package, install it, and then refactor my code to get it to kind of work the way I need it to. Okay, let's just do a cargo check, I guess. Okay, cargo's not found. And let's just run it. I'm going to say cargo run and see if this thing works now. Unresolved import YouTube DLP. We cannot run this. I did a cargo check and it's not running, so I'm going to just force it to fix this real quick. Again, I think I could probably fix the issues if I knew more about Rust. Oh, it looks like I didn't add it. Okay, let's just go back and add this. Now, the one thing I'll say about Rust is like, is this the feedback loop? Is this how long I have to wait every time I make a change? Because this is like not enjoyable, right? I don't know why someone would love coding with Rust when you have to wait this long for stuff to compile. Maybe it's because it's the first time we ran it. So let's just go ahead and run the ID and see what happens. So it's initializing the library. And we got this weird error. It's saying command failed, commands libs ffmpeg, blah, blah, blah. But I do see an error. I do see a video over here. So like I'm kind of confused why it said it failed, but then the video is literally right here. So I think there's like a cleanup function that's maybe not working fine. I'm going to copy this. And I have a script that says like, I have ffmpeg installed. I get this error. I'm going to go ahead and just paste in this error and try to have it walk me through what might be wrong here. ffmpeg is failing because the output file name contains %exts, which ffmpeg does not understand. It needs a real extension like mp4 or .mkv. I mean, it has the mp4 right there. I guess the extension that we're saving it as is missing. Output file name video.mp4. So I'm going to try to run this again and see what happens. Okay, so we successfully have the video over here. It looks like I put the videos inside a video mp4. And yeah, I mean, this is working pretty good. So I think at this point, again, the point is learning, right? Are you learning? Are we learning? Do we know what we're actually doing here? And hopefully we do. The one thing I'd probably say is, okay, how do you actually split this up into smaller modules? Because right now it's like one giant main script, not the best in terms of coding, right? So I'm going to try to ask it, can you find a way to split this up into smaller modules? Like I want a separate module that's wrapping all the download YouTube video stuff, so I can make the main function a little bit concise and easy to follow. So we'll just go ahead and run this and see what it kind of does to our file. And then we're going to learn about module systems in Rust, hopefully, when this happens. So creating a downloader module for YouTube download logic and refactoring main RS to use it. So I guess it just makes a separate file over here. We got ensure directories, make sure that the downloads directory is created, initialize or download, public async. So again, this is very similar to JavaScript. There's a public function here inside of this module. It's asynchronous. Knowing this stuff, I guess, is useful. And it just kind of took all that stuff that was in the main file and put it over here. So yeah, pretty straightforward there. The one thing that we'll probably have to keep in mind is like these types. I'm not really sure about the type annotations. I guess result is we return a YouTube object. Otherwise, we can return an error. Yeah, I probably have to dive more into that, but I think this looks pretty straightforward. How does main change? Let's go back over here and accept all the changes and read through it. So this is handling the inputs, and then we're checking it. I would probably even ask it to move the inputs to its own module too. So I'm going to stop this. Can we also move the whole inputs, like parsing the inputs and getting the ID into its own module as well to keep it a little bit cleaner? Probably going to make like an input manager, input parser over here. Probably pull out all this code and put it into a different file. Let me stop this. I'm not sure what it's doing. I'm going to make a new window over here. All right, now we have a really clean main file. It basically just gets the video URL from the input, We use the downloader to grab it, and then we just basically write it to that directory, and we have an input file over here that does all that logic, okay? So what I'm trying to focus on learning right now is a module system. Looks like you just say mod input, and then you can namespace that file, input : and then any public function that lives in that file, we can actually start using. So that's pretty cool. Like, we can basically split our code up into smaller modules, import them, use the namespace, and just evoke them. Let's just make sure this thing still runs. Let's do a cargo run. It looks like there's a little error with how this is working. So mismatch types, download video from URL, expected a string and found an @string. Okay, so where are we calling that? That's in the downloader. This is coming in as an @string. So I wonder if I could try this ourselves. Like, if we just change this to string, that might fix it. But then we have to figure out where we're calling download video. And then instead of passing URL here, you probably have to make like a clone of the URL. Let's try this. Again, I'm just trying stuff out. Maybe it'll work. I'm testing my assumptions that do I know Rust, and it looks like that fixed it. Okay, so I do kind of understand what's going on with the borrow checker. Not 100%, but I'm better than I was like 30 minutes ago, right? Let's run this and see if it works. And it looks like it's successfully downloading it, which is pretty cool, okay? Okay, so now I'm getting like a weird timeout error. I don't know if that's a Rust thing or like fluke for downloading the video. I'm not sure why it has a 30-second timeout. This did not have this issue prior. So I wonder if maybe download video takes in options that needs to like increase that timeout. Or if this is like a Rust thing, maybe moving in the separate modules requires something else with like the borrow checker. I'm not really sure. Using relative paths, libs, and downloads can break if the working directory changes, converting them to absolute paths. Get the current directory, join them, join it with libs. I am curious, why does it need a libs directory? I'm going to try writing this again. All right, looks like it's still failing. So we'll probably have to figure out why that all of a sudden started breaking and it was working before. I would probably even jump down to a more powerful model now. I might even say, like, let's try Opus. And I'll just go ahead and copy this. It looks like we're getting the same error. Can you figure out why we're getting a timeout? Prior, I ran this script and it worked just fine. And then I started moving different files into different modules. Like, I created the downloader module and the input module. And now we're getting this error with timeouts. This was not happening just a second ago. Let's just go ahead and run this one with Opus, and hopefully it can try to figure out what's going on. It says that's the issue. Video MP4 already exists. When FFmpeg tries to write or merge the existing file, it prompts for confirmation and hangs, waiting for input. Okay. I mean, I guess that makes sense. I guess we just need to delete it if it already exists. So fs remove file. That makes sense. Let's just try to run this one more time. Uh-oh. We're still getting errors again. Let's just go ahead and try to get this working. We're going to download the video, and hopefully it can finish without crashing. And now we have the video. So just a recap. The things that I taught right now, these are what I do when I'm trying to learn something new. And I will say that you will often move slow. And even me, I've been coding for a very long time. But when I'm learning something new, don't expect to move super fast. You need to understand all the new things about a syntax, about a package system, the Rust borrower, the Rust data types. Like, these are things that I don't really understand. But the point is, if you can get good at using LLMs to help guide you, don't always trust the output, because as you can see, it took multiple iterations to get the thing working. But just using it as a tool to help guide you can be very beneficial. And then also at some point, like, try to modify the code yourself. Like I did with the changing the current directory, or like some string I changed. I think it was like the URL. You should slowly be able to start reading the LLM output and then start really understanding the syntax and, like, you know, what the ampersand actually is and how do you actually clone stuff. And you saw that when I mainly changed this from taking in a pointer to a string. I changed it to actually clone it and then pass it in. And I didn't need the LLM to help me do that because I'm starting to understand Rust a little bit better. And I think that's the goal. Don't just blindly let these things implement everything for you. Go slow, figure it out along the way. And then once you do have a good understanding of the syntax, that's when I would say leverage the LLM more to just build the code. And then you can just do a quick spot check to make sure it seems like it's good. So if you guys enjoyed this little tip of using an LLM to learn a new language like Rust, go check out Agentic Jumpstart. I have a course with over 80 different videos, 12 hours of content. I teach Claude Code and Cursor, and a lot of the things I've learned along the way, building out various things using my agentic coding workflows. So we're going to be walking through all those tips and tricks, Cursor, Claude Code, and then we build out a full stack web application using Drizzle and TanStack Start and getting it deployed somewhere. So I think this is a really good value. Go check it out if you want to learn more about agentic coding. But I do find that coding with an LLM just makes you that much more productive. And I do think learning some tips and tricks along the way can just make you a better coder. All right, have a good day. Happy coding.